I want to personally thank that choir. I know what it takes to build a choir in Chinle, Arizona, and all that goes on in our little big city. Sometimes you would think I pastored in New York City, then you look outside, and it's just Chinle, Arizona. We're catching Phoenix now. We have a Denny's. Don't fuck Denny's, best restaurant in Arizona. And I know my grandkids, the Navajos took everything, even my grandkids are Navajos. I go visit them in South Dakota. I said, where are you going to eat? Anywhere in Rapid City. And with a Navajo accent, Pampa, we want to go to Denny's. So the Navajos have taken it all. I want to thank Pastor Campbell and Connie and this wonderful, amazing congregation. I would like to believe that today's performance was much better than I will enter his gates with thanksgiving in his heart 25 years ago. We want to thank you for allowing us to come again. You know, many years ago, as I was a very young disciple, I was never given ministry. I was actually kind of bitter. And then one day, one of the several pastors that I had, it wasn't my original pastor, but he said, I'm going to give you a Bible study. So he gave me a Bible study, and it was all Navajos in the congregation. Well, I didn't know how to preach, and I didn't really know how to read much, but I was real good with people. So we began to do healing crusades all over the reservation. And Pastor Mitchell got wind of it. He knew I wasn't a pastor, but he knew I had a group of Navajos, and we were praying for the sick all over the reservation, so he invited me to come and preach. He sent the airplane for me. My pastor wasn't real happy. He left the fellowship anyway, but he wasn't real happy. And I remember going home so excited. I ran into the house and said, Sandra, you're not going to believe it. I get to preach in Prescott. She says, that's wonderful. Where are all the kids? And I locked them inside the church and left without them. And much like the Sunday school this morning that I so enjoyed, I love Sunday school here, man. I only had one sermon. And it was called, The Gospel is the Power of God.
That's a sermon to have.
That's the only sermon I knew. That's the only sermon I had. So what do you think I did? I preached my only sermon, my first sermon, in Prescott, Arizona. I found those notes the other day. I need to send a letter of apology to Prescott. And guess what? I have that same sermon for you today. Now, the name of my sermon is The Gospel is the Power of God. As I looked over those very hideous notes with the big fat highlighters and big old ugly letters handwritten, I found a little bit more in that passage that I believe will help us today. If you have your Bibles, turn with me to the book of Romans chapter 1, verse 14 through 16. In the midst of this passage of Scripture where I drew my first text many years ago, Paul is speaking very graphically here. And before he declares the power of God, he says, I am a debtor both to the Greeks and to the barbarians, both to the wise and to the unwise. So as much as is in me, I am ready to preach the gospel to you that are at Rome also. For I am not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for it is the power of God unto salvation to everyone that believes, to the Jew first and also the Greek. The text that I'm using today It's a very powerful passage of Scriptures. It declares the unbelievable power of God that has absolutely impacted the Navajo Nation. As I'm listening to these stories, just in these little short testimonies, I can't tell you I ever heard Cheryl's testimony. That would have been the last girl. But I do remember her little son coming to church. He was 7. And he came alone. He came in a little dressed up little suit. I remember he came up to me and he says, "Are you the pastor?" And I said, "I am." He says, well, I came today and a couple of things. I want to be a pastor. He's 7. And I'm looking down at him. I said, "Who'd you come with?" "I came alone." "Oh, by the way, I need a Bible, and I want a real Bible, not a child's Bible." So I went to Bibles Plus in Albuquerque. Couldn't get that little guy out of my mind, so I bought him a leather-bound real preacher Bible with his name on it. And as a result of that little guy, the power of God impacted Mom and Dad and Grandma and Grandpa and everyone around him. Listen to me. We can never come to the place where we're ashamed of the gospel of Jesus Christ. It is the power of God to anyone that believes. I'm going to talk to you firstly about the heart of Paul here. Because I've got to tell you, if I died today, I got way more than I ever deserved. As I look at what God has done in these people's lives, it absolutely takes my breath away. In the middle of the Navajo Nation, I got news for you. The greatest thing happening there is the declared gospel of Jesus Christ, changing lives all over the Navajo Nation. But Paul's heart has to be noticed in this passage. He owes a debt of gratitude, is what this text is saying. So profound, he says, "I am a debtor." This is a debt of thankfulness and appreciation and readiness, and it's wrapped up in willingness and passion. In the life of Paul, we are able to see working in his heart an amazing desire and a passion to preach this precious gospel of Christ. We see his heart in the text because it says, "As much as is in me, I am ready to preach." This is more than a feeling of confidence or superiority. He is talking about something so profound. He understands that I am chosen to preach the power of God to anyone that believes. He says, "I'm a debtor." In his own personal description, no doubt motivated by his own conversion and all that Jesus Christ has done in his life. No doubt he is remembering that he was the chief amongst all sinners. No doubt he was remembering the persecution of the church. No doubt he was remembering all that his life was not. And he is articulating all that God has done. And he says, "You know what? I'm a debtor." His gratitude is seen in the book of Acts, chapter 9, as we are able to read of his conversion. Acts chapter 9, verse 3 gives us a glimpse of what took place as he came near Damascus, and suddenly there shined around about him a light from heaven, and it was there that his conversion began. It was there that God reached down and touched his life, and as George Rose said, it was there where God found him. The road of Damascus. the grace that was poured out upon his life. His gratitude, no doubt, is flowing from a heart and a debt of gratitude. I am a debtor. The outflow of his conversion, the outflow of his deliverance, his own experience, his own calling of God on his life. He says, I am a debtor. Acts chapter 9, verse 15 begins to speak of Paul's life, and it says, for he is a chosen vessel unto me, to bear my name before the Gentiles and kings and the children of Israel. I think of my own life. As I stand here today, it has been 38 years ago today that I gave my life to Jesus Christ. We are so unaware of the depth of the privilege it is to be saved. Here's Sunday school. I about jumped up and danced, and then I wanted to weep. For we don't even know, we don't even get it why we were saved. I was the least of my family members. Get saved. A chosen vessel. No one will declare that of themselves very easily. But as I look back now in the multiple years I've been in Chinle, and I just want to tell you, that hasn't been the easiest ride. The glory that God has manifested in them. Watching God build. For anyone that's a native knows that last night was probably the largest assembly of native Navajo American Indians in the entire reservation. Their largest ceremony. With all respect, nonetheless true, a display of idolatry that can't be measured by any modern religion you can ever think of. The gathering of the Shiprock Fair. No doubt 100,000 natives assembled there this weekend. As I look back now, it was like that night God said, I've had enough. I'm going to raise up a man that will lay down his life for these people. In Gallup, New Mexico, I call that Navajo heaven. Ask any Navajo, where'd you go Christmas shopping? Gallup. Where'd you get married? Gallup. What store you like? Walmart. Gallup. What's your favorite restaurant? Avalon's. My kid's born in Gallup. Everybody loves a Gallup. When's your birthday? Powwow, Gallup, 1976. And all the Navajos know exactly what I'm talking about. Right? That night, the big ceremony was going on. My hand was going up in a music scene. And suddenly, there shined around about me a light from heaven. From that day forward, I would never be the same. Even as Paul speaks out of this text, I am a debtor. I share that sentiment with him. The word debtor here means I'm an ower. I'm indebted to. All that is in me and all that is happening to me and through me, I owe to the Lord Jesus Christ. I owe him everything. I am a debtor. And I want to tell you this morning, I thank God for my salvation and all that he has done in my life. I am a debtor. I owe the Lord something.
Yes, amen.
Looking back at my conversion of 38 years, I cannot believe what salvation has done in my personal life. See, as Paul is speaking, he is saying it is the power of God unto salvation. As I look back at my own life, the power of God to bring deliverance. I've been saved so long I can't even believe I used to be a drunk. I used to drink Schlitz and Seagram 7 every day. Don't mock, I was a poor drunk. Car painters drink all the time. It's been 37, 38 years since I touched alcohol. The power of God. I used to be a dope smoker and a pill popper. 37 years and 6 months. That took a little longer. As I look back, I'm shocked. My personal deliverance. Sandra and I have been married for 40 years. I've been kissing on her for 42 years. All my children are in the ministry. My home. My calling. I get to be these people's pastor.
What a privilege.
Ephesians 3:20 says, "Now unto him who is able to do exceedingly abundantly and above all what we can ask or think, according to the power of God that is working in us." See, Paul writes this knowing that it's a supernatural experience. It is the only thing on the planet that can change and transform a life and release healing power. So real, so amazing, so unbelievable, to say the least. For this cause, Paul says, I'm honor bound. The Greeks and the barbarians, to the wise and to the unwise, declaring with gratitude he is not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for it is the power of God unto salvation to anyone who will call on his name. I want to talk to you secondly about the audience in our text. You know, there's a clear audience that he is indebted to. And you know, I was very intrigued in the array of who is describing. He says, I'm a debtor to the Greeks. I'm a debtor to the barbarians. I'm a debtor to both the wise and to the unwise. As much as is in me, I must preach the gospel of Jesus Christ to them. The Greeks, says, I'm indebted to them, and this properly denotes those who dwelt in Greece. They were the most polished people of the past. They were refined. They would be the educated and the wise. They would be the business people. No doubt it is speaking, beloved, of the teachers of the law, the Pharisees included, and all of those who have unbelievable privilege on earth. He is saying, I have a debt to the Greeks. And I know that in the text has got an array of everyone we're supposed to reach, but I want to tell you, man, everybody needs Jesus. I had the privilege of not too long ago getting to pray with the acting president of the Navajo Nation. Came to my office the day after election, asked me for prayer, and I led him to receive Jesus Christ as his Lord and Savior. Pray for the vice president. And as a result of all the effort to reach the Greek, the polished society, the Navajo Nation just granted me 2 more acres adjacent to the Chinle Potter's house, right in the middle of town, no strings attached, no payments, all mine. I have the title deed to more land. polished society need to be exposed to the power of God. He says, I'm indebted to the barbarians. You know, this word in the English language today, you're a barbarian, that would not be a good thing to tell somebody. This term, when you look at it carefully, you'll find that it is a general term that was used for anyone who wasn't a Greek. It speaks of those who speak a foreign language or a foreigner. It was applied to all those who did not use the tongue of Rome. Those, no doubt, were different in race, as it is so in the case of my life. And debt, as I moved to Chinle, Arizona, at that time, it's been almost 30 years, you got to understand the primary language was Navajo back then. They spoke English, but they thought, and most people spoke in Navajo. In them early days, I had to use an interrupter, an interpreter. And you know, everywhere you go, it was all in Navajo. Even the bakery. Your bakery just says bakery. My bakery says Batlakangbagan. That means the house of sweet things. But to see the power of God break into that nation, to see all that God would do, the unbelievable display of God's power. I'm indebted to those who are a different culture, a different race, those that speak a different language. I was telling Pastor earlier, we did a Native American Day. Are you ready for this? In Shanghai, China. Who would have thought that fry bread would win the world to Jesus Christ? So when you eat that today, that is the unleavened holy bread. It's not yeast bread, it's not French bread, it's fry bread. Unleavened bread, God might be a Navajo. No. He did say, put your lamb and eat it all. He didn't say enchiladas, he didn't say frijoles, he didn't say steakies, he gets some sheep. Just saying, just saying. He says, reach the wise. You'd have thought that would have been caught up in the Greeks, but the term wise here is audience. These are people who possess much wisdom. They would have been the business class. They would have been the money people. Paul's understanding that his indebtedness is to society as a whole. If we're not careful, we'll want to pick and choose. I can remember years ago, you know, when you live out there, you realize, you gotta admit, even though the Navajo people, at least the majority of them didn't want me to leave. I'm sure there was a few holdouts that could have gave me up pretty easy. But I'd go to a conference and I told Pastor Mitchell I'm open to do anything, and they never called me, whatever. And then we stand up there on Thursday and all my friends were going overseas. I'm sitting there, hey man, what the heck, right here. I'm the only guy I know that if I get sent to Africa, I'd be happy. There's more in Africa than in Chinle. I remember being real frustrated one day. So I made 20 flyers and put on a suit. And I went to every business in Chinle and asked for the manager. I said, I need 5 minutes of your time. Sat down with them and said, what are you doing in Chinle? I want to know. And I wasn't Navajo. They didn't know who the heck I was. I said, well, we're here because our family's here. We're here because we love these people. We're here because this is our homeland. I said, well, how would you like to reach these people? How would you like to see change? And you would have been shocked to see how many business people I won to Jesus Christ with a one outreach. I'm indebted to the energy behind any city. Paul is giving the full scope of what's needing to happen here. He says, and I'm willing to preach to these people. He wasn't moved by all that they project, wasn't moved by the polish, wasn't moved by the wise. He knew he was holding the answers to life. And for this cause, he says, I am not ashamed of this gospel of Christ. He says, I have a debt that's owed. Then we see to the unwise. I've got to tell you that we've made profound inroads into this group of people. It's talking about the downtrodden. With everyone I studied, it said the ignorant or the unpolished part of mankind, to the learned and to the unlearned, that they would experience the power of God. And there has to be a willingness to preach this gospel to this group of people, a debt owed. And recently, this doesn't happen all the time, but I just did I'll just say, I've just exceeded 300 funerals in my ministry. One of our pastors just lost a family member. We do that on Tuesday. One day, I walked into the community cemetery. And we're doing a funeral for a woman whose body was found here in the valley. And when they were searching through her backpack, she had no identification. She had a backpack full of flyers from the Chinley Potter's house. So they made the connection with the tribe, Windrock. Yeah, we know Pastor Aragon quite well. And they asked me if I'd do a proper funeral for her. She was an alcoholic. There were 40 people that came to her funeral and they were all drunk. Some of the boys might remember that day. There was a woman passed out outside my office. A man passed out in the front doors. Everyone in the building was drunk. There the pastor is, man, with this casket. I threw away my sermon. God spoke to me, except I build this house, you will labor in vain. You've got to reach these people. And I pulled them all in the front row and said, we got to talk. What's going to take to get this curse to be broken? What can you bring to the table? Remember, hung out most of the day with those people. But here's what was so intense, why they need to be reached. One of the boys told me, Pastor, did you see who you're burying her next to? And I said, so I went over to the grave right next door, and he was a gentleman that got killed by the park rangers a few months ago. He was selling rocks there at the canyon for many years. The canyon's been taken over by Washington. So they had a new rule. You can't sell rocks here. Well, he's been there 35 years. Granted, he's a scary looking guy. He's got a feather tattooed right here, got the F word tattooed on his lips. He's a scary guy. I used to call him a walking church. He used to come to my church all the time. Well, they told him, get your rocks and get out of here. He got a little aggressive, so the park rangers filled him with bullets 7 times. But I didn't know. This boy on the top here had been murdered by this guy. So I had the teenage boy, his killer, and the mother of the teenage boy in a little triangle. We better never forget the debt we have to the unwise. Paul is speaking in an array of amazing truth. He says this is the only thing that can tip the scales. This is the only thing that will make a difference. He says it is the power of the gospel of Jesus Christ to anyone that will believe. He says, I am a debtor to these people. I close with the power of God to anyone that will believe. It's interesting that Paul makes his statement, I'm not ashamed. The other day I was at the trash dump. Y'all don't know nothing about that. You probably don't go to the trash dump much. Generally, we go every other day. We don't have an organized trash system. So, the church accumulates a lot of trash. And you don't leave it in the Herbies because the horses and dogs get into it and you'll have to pick it up twice or 3 times so you can go to the trash dump all the time. There was a young man there and God told me, you haven't witnessed to this guy, you've seen him 100 times. Don't you hate when that happens? Yeah. I'm like all of the pastors. I preach every flaming day in that church, man. Let somebody else talk to that guy, whatever. So God kept dealing with me. So I finally witnessed to him. The guy looked at me and says, Pastor, I know you very well, and I'm going to go to church one day. Marvin Dohai and my sister witness to me every single time they see me. I'm a debtor. Paul had firm convictions of its value and its truth. Yeah, sometimes I think we need a revelation of that. This is more than the promotion of a religion or nice little cliches. It is the power of God to change a life. Paul had experienced so much in his own life. The very consolations of his own life were driving him. He had seen the power of God in his personal life. Far from being ashamed of it, he glorified